Hello and welcome to my webinar on imposter syndrome. Thank you for joining me, and yeah, I love sharing the theory on this and some information on this because it's very dear to my heart. It's absolutely been my story and it still is. I'm a work in progress, and it absolutely is the story for so many of both my private and my corporate clients. So just a little bit of background before I go to slides. I first started doing webinars and talks on this less than a year ago, so mainly just this year. And that was because I'm very passionate about it. I've written a section in my book about it, and I was speaking to somebody at a women's club about it, and they went, wow, okay, I want you to do a talk on it. And I was like, yeah, fantastic. And I got home and I was completely struck with the full-on imposter anxiety about doing a talk about imposter syndrome. The typical, oh my God, who am I to do it? I'm not a professor, I'm not a psychologist, oh my God, and I was up half the night, blah, blah, blah. And then the next morning, when I spoke to a friend, she was like going, oh my God, so you're perfect because look, you're in it right now. And that's the irony, that's the paradox of imposter syndrome. It's usually people who want to be out there doing things, making a difference, stepping out of the comfort zone, like me or all of my clients. And then it's that abject fear you get that you're a faker and a fraud and you're about to get found out. So that's why I want to share it with you, and hopefully this will be useful. So I'm just going to go to slides. So what we will cover today. So what it actually is and is not, and there is actually some good news around that. Why and when imposter syndrome raises its ugly head, how it impacts your whole life, and the good news, what we can all do about it to start having that not rule our lives so much. So these are all kind of signs and things you might be saying in your head that might give you an indication of whether you've got this or not. So I don't know if these mean anything to you. So it is things like, oh my God, they've hired me. What the hell have they done? Have I oversold myself? That was just a client this morning I'm working on with this. I've gone through 8 interviews, but have I oversold? I've been racking my brain, blah, blah, blah. And absolutely, you should know how smart this woman is, and she is overqualified for the job. We'll come to that in a minute. Everyone else here is better than me, smarter than me. I'm not good enough, and I'm going to get found out. It's that combination. And that is the distinction. So it's not just having a bit of, a lack of self-belief. The distinction around imposter syndrome is that it's this intense feeling of intellectual phoniness, that you are a fake or a fraud, despite the evidence to the contrary. Despite all of your achievements, and this is what it does, it has you dismiss everything and forget everything. So like when I called my friend, she was like, Sue, you've been working on with clients around this for 12 years. You know your stuff, you've just written a whole section, you've done all the research, you know the psychology, you know, it's that. That is the thing that imposter syndrome does. It gets you to forget all of that. A few more facts about it. So it's first coined as a phrase. It's not a syndrome, but it was first discovered or named in 1985 when a couple of women did a study on, Clance was the main person, did a study on ambitious professional women. And that was back in 1985. It is thought that it's about 70% of us that all kind of suffer from it at some point. I would argue that it's way more, way higher than that in women, and I know some people disagree with me, but I absolutely, that's what I see in my experience, and I think it's down to the fact that in terms of gender, as women, we are conditioned to not boast, not big ourselves up, not be a big head, things like that, plus more likely to internalize failures. What else? Yeah, it's not a syndrome because it's not a mental health issue that's in your brain, that's a part of your brain chemistry. It's actually a belief system. It's picked up along the way and completely affected by outside people and circumstances, mainly people, though I would say. So here is the cycle. I have done my own cycle here. So I'll just use an example just to help with this of a client that I work with, Sarah, marketing director, super cool, walked in my coaching room. She had this red lipstick on like me. She had like really amazing clothes, super cool, those clear rimmed glasses, amazing. And then as we spoke, and what she wanted to work on was she just left one role, she was going into another, and she was at this start line. She had just been given it and it was an amazing achievement. She deserved it, absolutely. And then bang, in came the imposter syndrome. In came this, oh my God, I'm not up to this. Like the woman I was working with this morning, did I oversell myself? Have I lied? Can I really do it? They're going to find me out. All of that. And then with her, what she'd already gone into was the overwork. So before she'd even started, she'd come to see me, but she was already seeing a leadership expert. She was doing online courses to swat up on leadership. She was reading books into the night. And this is all with, she had a young daughter and a husband, and we'll come to the impacts, the other big impacts around that. So I generally have clients that go into overwork because you want to prove yourself, prove yourself, prove yourself. That's my story too, but it can affect you with procrastination as well. So you put off things. Actually, they can go hand in hand because it can have you procrastinate, put off big things, the big things you want to do for fear that you're an imposter, you'll get found out. So especially if it has you being very visible, so like doing a podcast or being on social media, things like that, that can trigger it as well. Then, even when you get to do the project or the success, as she was doing a massive presentation, even then at the finish line, you go, great, and then you go, it's like, yeah, did it, and then bang, again. Oh my God, they'll have found a mistake. Oh my God, what did my CEO think of me? He thought I was this, he thought I was that. That's how it affects you. This is the crucial bit. In terms of feedback, you reject praise. You absolutely don't take it on, and you internalize any perceived failures. I had a client I was just speaking to yesterday. She was convinced she'd done a terrible webinar, all of that. And then when I looked back at the recording, it was absolute rubbish. It wasn't at all how she had portrayed it to me. So it's incredible what this can have you believe. And then it's like rinse and repeat. Now this cycle can be one big event, or it can happen multiple times throughout the day. So that's what we're talking. So in terms of your personal life, it can absolutely cause stress, anxiety, have you pushing on through way past your capacity, way past any decent levels of what's possible of a human being to be working every day. You tend, this is certainly the case for my client Sarah, most of my clients, and this is how I have gone with it. So this is huge. You crack this, it will have a massive impact on your life. It has you less likely to ask for help. So you do it all yourself. You beat yourself up. You say all that nasty stuff to yourself, stuff you wouldn't say to a good friend. Have you working long hours, weekends. Can also lead, so massively, easily lead to burnout, one of the main causes, but also lead to isolation and depression because you're so in that zone, there's no room for anyone or anything else. The knock-on effect in terms of romantic relationships, this is huge. It can be massively frustrating and exhausting for a partner of somebody with imposter syndrome. That's because whatever you say, they won't believe you and they'll brush it off and it just doesn't go in. So that can be really difficult and painful for the other person on the receiving end of that as well. And that's what I see a lot of. It also leads to, if you're suffering from it, to be rarely present, because again, you're thinking about what you need to do, you're beating yourself up, you're going, oh my God, you're in anxiety, you're just in it. And that's when, when I just mentioned the isolation, you're just in that. What else? It can have huge effects on your children, because, and this is what I found in my early days of when I was a coach, and I caught myself, it just has you be that harsh, critical parent that you may have had yourself. So you can easily pass it on to your children as well. You know, in terms of whenever they go, oh, I've done this, it's like, you know, my thing was like, yeah, but what about that? Yeah, but what about that? Because that had been my experience. So it can have a huge effect going on to your children. And in terms of your career and leadership, this is a biggie. And this is where I see it being a biggie, especially for women, because it can have you not voicing your opinions. This is where I commonly see it show up for women leaders. It has you be in meetings and think, oh my God, I don't really know my stuff. Oh my God, no, I can't possibly say this. And, you know, really feeling those intense feelings, those intense imposter feelings in the moment. It can also have you really being one of those harsh, critical, micromanaging kind of bosses. So not very inspiring, not very, you know, handing over and enabling, and not enabling is not the right word, but not inspiring, not really being empowering, that's the word. Because it has you, what you've got such impossibly high standards and you need to do it all. Nobody can do it as good as you. And then of course you can't, and you beat yourself up as well. So it can, you know, really lead to huge burnout issues for you, and also not reaching your full potential in terms of leadership. So on reflection, what I'd like you to do is pause me and actually write a few things down, a few thoughts, make the most of this, make the most of me right here, right now. Any of this sound familiar? And if so, what particular elements of what I've talked about? So really note them, because this is the start of awareness of, this is the first stage of doing something about this. And in terms of those different areas, what's the impact on your life? What does it actually cause happen? You know, real tangible things. So for example, Sarah, you know, she was so not present. She was really short-tempered with her young daughter. She was really pushbacky on her husband, and that was creating huge issues in her relationship when we first started working together. So those are the kind of areas it can affect it. And what could this cost you in the future? So just pause me and write a few things down. So if you did, how was that? What did you get to? And it's time to take a deep breath and to move on to a little bit more information, just to give you a bit more insight before we go to what you can actually do about it. Now, as I briefly mentioned at the top, this luckily doesn't make it feel nice, but luckily is something that we've picked up along the way. So this is according to, you know, what you've had to do as a child to feel valued, to feel loved. Not making it bad, just, you know, in a lot of families, you know, we have to either be quiet or silent or a good girl, or, you know, put others first, or not show off, or whatever it is, not maliciously intended, just the way some families are, particularly in previous generations. So it can also come from school, culture. You know, if there's very harsh, very driven, very academic focused school culture, you know, if you're not that way, or even if you are that way, there's always more, there's always more, there's always more. Really not acknowledging that you're good enough, and you are good enough just as you are. Because as soon as you achieve any of your value to do with an achievement, that is what causes the issue. So those are the areas that it comes from. And just talking about a bit further about those conditions of worth. So these can be things like, you've got to work hard, you've got to look after others, put others first. What I've talked about a couple of times, be silent, be small, or be strong, you know, whichever it is, or be perfect, or why didn't you do this? What about this? You know, if you've got this a pushy parent who is always looking at the gap, So never at the achievement, but always at the lack and the gap. Those are key areas that can cause imposter syndrome. So, some good news. There is some good news. This is what you can do. So this is just to get you starting to think about what you can do about it. So, like with my client Sarah, what the first thing to do is this big thing that I'm going to do, like for Sarah, her promotion and then doing a big talk to her new CEO. Is this what I want? Is it worth it? You know, what do I want to be doing out there in the world? So really check in with that first. And if it is, then identify the imposter voice. So the voice in your head that says, what about this? What about that? What about this? And commonly it's a parent. So like for Sarah, it was her father, or it can be commonly it's a mother as well. Or it can be a teacher, or if it's not somebody specific or you don't feel comfortable making it somebody specific, have it be an invented character. So every time you hear that voice, attribute it to them, and then say, you know, internally ask yourself, how is it serving me to listen to this voice right now? And if it isn't, send it off to do its golf playing or its lunching or whatever it does, or tell it to do one, that's what works for me, or some people like to slap a thigh, whatever it is, to separate it out from you, because what you're doing in that is putting it in its rightful place. This is somebody else's beliefs that you've taken on as your own, because at some point in your life you just had to belong and to be loved and all of that. So what you're doing is separating it back out. Then in terms of the overwork or the procrastination, the first thing to do is to absolutely take care of yourself. So sleep, nutrition, exercise. You have to reduce your stress levels. You have to make a commitment to your self-care, because when you're in full-on stress, anxiety, fight or flight mode, it's game over. You are just going to go with the old behavior, and it's very difficult to make more conscious choices and decisions. So self-care, and then make the conscious choice to do something different. Then this is so crucial. The next step, and this is what we did with Sarah, is actually have you sit in the celebration, sit with the win, sit with the achievement, recognize it, acknowledge it, mark it, write it down, put evidence, whatever, but mark this achievement, because that's the thing about imposter syndrome. It has you dismiss it, forget it, and push it away. Really important. And then in terms of when you do get feedback as well from others, record it, keep it, hold on to it, build an evidence library, take it, hold it, do not brush it off. And also in terms of perceived failures, like my other client I told you about, check in with someone else, and also check whether it's just a skills gap. So if you think you're not great at public speaking, which is one of my things, just get some public speaking training, which is what I did in order to do this, what I'm doing now. I got some help and training on how to structure a talk, because I've never done it before. So that's really helpful to really check it's a skills gap, and it doesn't mean, it's not further evidence that you're a fake or a fraud. And then this is it. I mean, really just be super conscious of that voice in your head that's super mean and super critical, and replace it with one that's kinder. Replace it with one that you would use with a good friend. So that is the other big thing around that. So, you know, when that imposter syndrome kicks in, so when you've separated it out, replace it with one that's like, you know, with Sarah, it's like, hey, you've got this. You are good enough. Come on, you've got this. You can do this, which is what she would have said to her friend. So in terms of actions, 3 key takeaways, really specific ones on top of what I've said. The first one is, and this is so valuable and so helpful, is that you collate some evidence-based feedback. So you go through old emails, old feedback sessions at work, or what lovely clients have said to you, or whatever. And also collect some. So put some questions out, you know, what do I do well? Can you give me an example of that? And that's the important thing. It has to come from a credible source, so somebody you respect, admire, and it has to be evidence-based, because otherwise that imposter voice of yours will completely rubbish it. Yeah. The other thing is to really, really practice sending that voice away, and then replacing it with a kinder voice, a kinder version, a mantra. So like Sarah did, hey, you've got this, you are good enough as you are. So they're my top tips. And the reason why this is so important, and this is a beautiful poem that has had a big impact on me and my journey with imposter syndrome, and this is why it's super important. We are all born to manifest the glory that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in every one. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically releases others. So this is why it's important, because imposter syndrome will keep you small, will keep you from shining your light and doing all the fabulous and wonderful things in your life that you want to do, and also the wonderful things that will have an impact on others and what they do. So it's like a ripple effect. It will absolutely stop that if you don't start separating it out. So that's it, that's my talk. I hope that's been useful for you, and I really do wish you happy imposter busting if that is something that you experience, you've had experience of. So wishing you well out there. Thank you for staying with me to this point. Thank you. See you. Bye.